The Second World War had a lasting effect on San Diego in population, jobs, and it laid the groundwork for making San Diego the military town it is today. When the announcement was made that Japan had surrendered, effectively ending the war, San Diegans took to the streets. With a look back at today's significance, I'm joined by retired Rear Admiral Rod Melendez, Executive Director of the San Diego Veterans Museum, and Scott McGaugh. He's the author of The Military in San Diego and Marketing Director of the USS Midway Museum. Welcome to you both. Scott, take us back to that day 70 years ago. How did San Diegans react to when they heard the war was over?
Well, as you might imagine, with unadulterated joy. In a sense, San Diego was liberated. They stormed the streets, Navy Pier, Broadway. It was sheer pandemonium with the same kind of dancing and kissing we all saw in Times Square on the other side of the country. You know, this city had undergone tremendous expansion, had a lot of challenges as a military boom town. There were literally young men getting ready to board transport ships on Navy Pier, possibly for the invasion of Japan. All that came to a halt to celebrate the end of 4 years of war.
Now, San Diegans had been through a lot.
Yes.
You name it, they went through it. What did this really mean for them, that the war was over?
An opportunity to resume their lives, perhaps to welcome home a father, a brother, an uncle, a son. Rationing would come to an end. They would be able to begin sending their kids to school again. Perhaps mom could stay home and raise the family because 40,000 women in San Diego were working in bomber manufacturing plants here in San Diego alone. So, you know, all of America and San Diego had put their lives on hold for 4 years in the maximum war effort. Now was an opportunity to reassess, grieve in many ways, and begin to build anew.
Rod Melendez, let's talk to you now about, you've had a lot of interactions with World War II vets. What are some of the stories that really stick in your mind?
Well, the stories are incredible, and we hear a lot of personal stories involved with combat and operations like that, but the stories expand the whole perspective. I mean, there were people here in the States that did a lot of work to support that industry. There were people stationed behind the firing lines. There were people that had non-combat type roles, but they all went together to help us win this conflict. And all those stories are very interesting, and we do have an active oral history program where we gather these stories.
How many World War II veterans are still around in San Diego, and how will they be marking this day?
Well, I would estimate that at our last Sunday event, we had several hundred World War II veterans there, and I know a number are coming to the Midway here this weekend, and those were people that came out. So it's a wild guess. I would probably say under 1,000, but I really don't know. I know that over 16 million men and women served in armed forces during World War II.
How did the war transform Balboa Park and the Naval Hospital?
Well, the Balboa Park was essentially given over to the Navy, and the Navy, Navy occupied all of the buildings in the central area and even out on the Palisades by the Air and Space Museum. Matter of fact, the Air and Space Museum was the only building that was still in civilian hands, and it was a school training aircraft workers for the war effort here. But the rest were training camps and hospital rooms and quarters. It was a massive Navy base, essentially.
And Scott, what about some of the other facilities at Balboa Park? I understand the fountains were in use, the pools. I mean, what happened there?
Well, as Rod points out, virtually all of Balboa Park was federalized, became part of what we used to call Balboa Hospital. Literally, Balboa Hospital, by the end of the war, comprised 241 buildings with more than 10,000 beds for the wounded that were coming home, mostly from the Pacific. So in those days, everything that had any kind of applicability to the war effort was handed over to the government. The lily ponds were used for aquatherapy for burned sailors as part of their rehabilitation. Everything was invested in that regard. Virtually 26% of all the land in San Diego was handed over to the federal government during the war years, nearly bankrupting the city because the war was top priority.
Amazing. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. Scott McGaugh and Rod Melendez, thanks very much for coming in.
Our pleasure.
Oh, thank you.